Hi guys, it's Luton here, and so today I'm going to do my little thoughts about Battlefield Hardline. Now, I could have scripted this out and done like a really sort of detailed, in-depth blow-by-blow analysis, but I just thought it's kind of stupid to do that based off of just a beta. We haven't seen fully enough of the game to give a complete opinion of it. Certainly, the first thing that I would say is if you are not completely sure, just wait. Just wait until the game is out. Wait until I or someone else can give you a full review of the game, because, you know, you can just do that. I'm still not fully on board. I'm 50-50 on this, you know. I haven't seen enough and felt enough of it to really get to grips with where we are. Something that I will say, and I think this may count quite a lot. I want to keep this video today all about kind of my actual feeling of the game, not necessarily delving into some of the very, very specific detailed on it, because sometimes those things you can get a bit het up on, you know, and I felt this way with other Battlefields, you know. Sometimes you can get really dragged up on the details, and those little things that you think matter a lot sometimes just really don't actually encounter that much in game, and overall you're kind of judging the game harshly on something which you don't encounter very often. So let me just kind of talk more about my overall experience. You know, last week I was looking back through some gameplay and stuff, and I was actually watching a bit of like my live comm stuff that I made, and I had been talking about the game, and I've been thinking like, oh, you know, so frustrating. I got frustrated with this, and I didn't like this, and I don't know where the series is going now, and all this kind of stuff. Then I watched my gameplay back, and I was like, damn, I seem to be having a lot of fun in this gameplay. And it sort of conflicted with me. It's like, you know, LT playing the game compared to me thinking about it afterwards. And so it was kind of at odds with each other. And I think that actually kind of speaks a lot about the game. On the other hand, we're in the beta, and, you know, you kind of, you have that initial glow. You know, it's like whenever a new game comes out, you have that 2-week cooling off period. And I always say this is why I don't like to review games straight out the gate. You often need to sit with them a little bit and sort of see really where it's going to. Because sometimes, two things actually, it goes both ways. Sometimes you can pick up a game and you think, ugh, what the hell is, you know, what's going on here? And then you stick with it a bit, and actually it turns out to be really, really enjoyable. That's happened to me a lot of time with games. Other times, you can enjoy it a lot, and you think, my god, this is so exciting. Happened to me with Titanfall. All of the previews I did with Titanfall, I played that game, and I just had a massive amount of fun every single time I played it. When the game actually came out, we were just like, flat. So having a little preview and so on, even, you know, there's not just me, but other YouTubers have played the game a lot. There's people that have been out to the US and come back and all this kind of stuff. But regardless of all those things, I don't think that you can put your hand on your heart and say you know how the game is going to be at this time. You really don't. One thing I will say that they have done really, really well, like I've said, is I think it's great that they've brought back faction-specific weapons. I think it's great the way they have balanced the guns to make them feel more individualistic. You know, this is something that I've always been in favour of for a long time. I like having weapons that actually have individual characteristics, because otherwise, why would you have them? In Battlefield 4, I felt like there was way too many guns in the game. There still is. And you know, making sure there's an actual difference between them is really, really important, because otherwise there's no reason to make a decision there. That's why I have said so many times before, I don't think that the loadout stuff for Battlefield 4 is particularly helpful, because there's just so many guns that are so similar. The actual amount that it affects your gameplay is so minimal. Whereas with Hardline, I really do feel that your weapon choice will have a more significant impact on the way in which you choose to play, and then your overall effect actually in the game. Some other things that they've obviously tried to do is they've tried to introduce, you know, some new game modes. So producing these new game modes like Hotwire, Heist, and this, so on and so on. So again, it's good to have those, but we'll have to see. You know, Hotwire feels like you could do with it really being 48 or more. And that's unusual, because I normally say I don't like the 64, but on Hotwire it really feels like you need it. You need to have, You need to have people chasing those cars down and putting pressure on them constantly, and then you need to be able to have the intermittent battles in between. And when you're playing like 32, it just doesn't happen. There's just not enough people. You got cars going around with 2 or 3 people in. Let's say you got like 4 cars up, that's 12 players, so that's going to be like a 30-odd team. Then the rest, 2/3 is spread around the map. Suddenly on a big map, that's not very many people. So it can kind of be, you know, spread out. When we were playing Hotwire on Dust Bowl, we would have moments where we suddenly found ourselves not really surrounded by anybody and no vehicles to grab from the bases, and you're just kind of left running around in the open with nothing to do. On the other hand, when you're actually in the vehicles and chasing around, it can be very intense when you're sort of firing down onto one another and all this kind of stuff. Heist, similarly. Heist, I feel, is a game mode that should be restricted in terms of player count. You don't have it on 64. We don't need that kind of clusterfuck crap going down, okay? I guarantee it will happen. 2,000 tickets. 2,000% tickets. 64. Yeah, it's coming, isn't it? You know, actually, while we're thinking about that, there is some crap as well. Like the camos and all the Easter egg BS. Seriously? Easter eggs before the game is even out? I mean, my god, if there is not a better sort of analogy for myself, it's that right there. It just kind of... See, here's the thing, is like people often, you know, they say, oh, it's fun and it gets the community together and all this kind of stuff. It's just, I'm not buying it. It's not that it actually has a big effect, and everyone is always so quick to be on me about this. It's like, oh, it's only 2 people worked on it. One guy on his like day off did it, and you're just like, okay, fine, whatever, you know. But it doesn't. It's not the point. The point, it doesn't matter who spent how much time on it. It doesn't matter whether they paid the company to allow them to do it, you know, or whatever. You know, working on his bank holidays to produce it overtime, and it didn't impact on anything. It doesn't matter. It's not the point. The point is that it's adding stuff in which detracts from the core purpose of the game, which is the objectives. The objectives are the primary purpose, and that's what they have always been. And it feels like, you know, sometimes those get a little distracted away from. But then you have people like Thad Sasser, who, you know, he's the head of the multiplayer aspect in Battlefield Hardline. And every time I've spoken to him, he's really been quite convincing to me that they do care about the multiplayer. I actually came to this conclusion that basically they do really care about the multiplayer. They do. And not just in a kind of technical aspect, in terms of a team play aspect. And they really do want to have this. But the trouble is, it's down on the community. And I'm going to make another video talking about this on a separate day this week. But basically, the community, not just for Battlefield, but other things in general. Now, again, it's actually kind of ridiculous to suggest that the Battlefield community has deteriorated. It kind of has, but it's always kind of been like that. You know, when I actually think back to the gameplay, it's like, yeah, you would often see a lot of these things happening. And it's funny how you get the rose-tinted glasses, you remember it being glorious always, when in fact it wasn't. There's many times you've had absolute frustration. And many times on Bad Company 2 where you couldn't even get out the spawn. So it just varies. It's just the way it goes, and I don't think you can pin it down to one series and say, yes, this is where the community went terrible. I've remembered pretty much all multiplayer experiences I've ever had have been extremely bad or good, so it just varies all over the place. And so I don't think you can really use that as a quantifiable judgment for Battlefield Hardline. It's something that you do need to obviously consider, but I don't think you can pin it on and say, okay, yeah, the community for this game will be bad or, you know, extremely good, one way or the other. It's going to be a mix depending on who you play with at what time and what's going down, you know. The other thing is going to be obviously the netcode side of stuff, and, you know, are they going to get that stable, etc, etc. Again, nobody can say that. Nobody can say that until it's released, until it's out. We can see the full stress testing and see how everything goes down. It's positive that they had a hell of a lot of people play the beta, and you can't ignore that. So, I mean, that should have given them tons of very useful information. Let's talk about the destruction really quickly. I made my big video about that the other day, and the destruction side of things is disappointing. I would have preferred to see a significant amount more destruction. You know, a lot of people have said to me, well, Luton, you know, this is the first time Visceral have really got used to using the Frostbite engine. I'm not buying it. It's not an excuse. They have DICE working literally hand in hand with them. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to say, oh, well, just because it's the first time that they have used this the engine, and that they've been working with it, that, you know, this is why there is not very basic levels of destruction on buildings that you would expect it. Unacceptable. You know, if you look back through, as I showcased, all the other previous Battlefields have this level of destruction. The best example that I could give was, you know, several times on different maps where I literally, as a Battlefield player, expected to be able to use the destruction to counter situations that I wouldn't have been able to handle otherwise, and was unable to do so. So think about like Dust Bowl, there's 2 or 3 guys in a building, I had picked up a small from another building, I wanted to fire into that building and if not kill them, at least expose that building. Unable. You are literally unable to do that. Other times I wanted to drop C4 on a building to blow in, either to get in there or kill the guys behind it. Again, can't do it, it just doesn't work. So the destruction for me is a major negative point, unacceptable. You know, I don't consider that there's any excuse for it. Battlefield has been known for its destruction for many titles, and I don't care which way you swing it or rationalise it and say, well, they can't have it, doesn't make sense, doesn't this, doesn't that. Unacceptable. You know, they could have got around it different ways. They clearly have people that they are working with all the time at DICE, so I'm disappointed severely in that aspect, and I think it strongly negatively affects the gameplay. Let's talk about another positive. The gunplay is more interesting now, I think, because of the differentiation between the weapons, and it's definitely more infantry focused, and I actually do prefer infantry focused gameplay most of the time. I do like having tank vehicle gameplay and so on, but I do love my domination and things like that, and it's not because I'm just like, I like to play arena shooters or anything like this kind of stuff, but it's more, it's kind of more focused, more intense. There are some multiplayer big maps on Conquest where that works, but a lot of the time you tend to have fragmented engagements between 2, 3, 4 players, and I like to have that kind of furious continuity, and you do get that with kind of like Hotwire and stuff like that. So again, that's a positive, and they have done a good job of like pushing that forward. Let's think about a negative. Some of the, you know, gimmicky aspects of the game I feel a little overblown. I'm thinking about stuff like the Easter eggs. I'm thinking about stuff like the melee weapons. Some people would say it gives it kind of like a unique characteristic or personality. I just think they're gimmicks, and I just think it doesn't really be required. But again, it speaks very much about your target audience. What kind of player are you trying to bring in with this stuff? You know, and that's the thing that interests me. It's not so much about it being in the game. It's about the thought process behind it. Why are they putting these things there? It's because they're trying to appeal to a certain demographic, and it's a demographic that I personally don't want to play with. So again, that's frustrating as well. What else can we talk about? The vehicles. Okay, the vehicles. I super love the vehicles in Battlefield Hardline. I feel like the Bearcat thing should have been left in. It was ridiculous. It was OP, but I would have been preferred to see that balanced than just removed automatically. And that thing, you know, the police tank, if you will. Basically, that thing, it makes perfect sense. They have those in service. I mean, if you want to get into that aspect, I'm actually going to talk about that in a sec. But basically, the tanks in Battlefield Hardline, they could have left them in there. You know, the heavily armoured vehicles, they could have left them in. They could have tweaked them, just let them have a heavy machine gun. Don't need to have that big-ass cannon. That would have been totally fine, totally acceptable. Again, you could have tweaked the damage model on there so it doesn't require like an RPG or several to take them down. You could have had it so it just requires some concentrated fire from the M320. That would have been totally acceptable. Or a C4 trap, you lay that down, bam, blows the hell out of it. So you could have had it work that way. It would have been interesting, and it would have made the gameplay a little bit more varied to have those things in there. So again, a little bit disappointed they took them out. But overall, the vehicles, the bikes, the cars, everything, the way that they re-engineered the cars to really feel like they're driving, that's great. I've loved that from the very first time I played that. The cars feel absolutely fantastic in it. So yeah, overall, I think and the helicopters, okay, let me just talk about that. Helicopters, you've got the transport, again, it's pretty balanced overall. The scout helicopter, I feel like, could be a pain if you get some people who really know what they're doing in it. So, I mean, again, I was able to go on a very long rampage with my scout helicopter with no problems whatsoever. So yeah, on that one. One other thing is to just mention about, I see a lot of comments from people on different topics about the fact that, hey, this doesn't make sense within a police situation, this doesn't make sense within cops and robbers. Why would that be that they wouldn't have that in real life? Guys, it's a police, cops and robbers game. It's a game in which people are running around with assault rifles shouting suspect down. You know, it doesn't make sense. It's silly. You know, you don't need to get into the technicalities of whether or not it would have it in real life. It's an absurd thing to make. Even whether they'd have it in police or not, as far as I'm concerned, it's like a theme, it's a foundation, and then you just build your game on top of that, okay? Honestly, so we don't need to get into the technicalities of whether or not they'd have that. They wouldn't have freaking pink zebra camo either, but they have that in the game, so, you know, people need to kind of take a little step back sometimes and go like, hey, you know, this isn't a police versus criminal simulation game, you know, otherwise every time they stole a car or whatever, they'd be ticketing them and making sure they got all the right paperwork filled out. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all I really wanted to talk about. Overall, I still feel pretty 50-50 on it. There's a community question to answer, there's some, you know, stability questions to answer, a lot of things that we won't know till the game comes out. I personally am planning to play pretty much solidly on my own server when the game comes out, because I'm kind of done with public games. I just cannot abide by them. They are agony, and so I think the only way I'm going to get strong enjoyability out of this game is to be playing on my server with people that really want to push and play those objectives hard and actually get some really strong games. So that's what I'm going to be looking to do at release anyway. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't think that Hardline is going to be an unenjoyable game, as I already explained from looking at my actual experiences with it, but I do think there is a big question mark whether it can be legitimately called a Battlefield title. I'm not sure. I don't know if I would classify it as a Battlefield title. It doesn't bear the hallmarks of a lot of things that I would consider it to be a Battlefield title, which are the multitude of vehicles, the destruction, the sort of overall feeling of just absolute grinding patterns, you know, just that aggressive Battlefield style of battling through. It's been more kind of hit and run with Battlefield Hardline, you know. You have periods where you're running quiet and periods where you're in the middle of the action, but overall I'm not sure. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. It is a kind of sidestep from the series, and so therefore maybe you can cut it some leeway and say, well look, you know, yeah, it's not in the main kind of primary line of Battlefield titles, it's like a sidestep, so therefore is that perhaps a more legitimate argument for it? I don't know. But for me personally, yeah, I'm not sure whether I'd put it into the actual Battlefield camp of titles, just because it seems to be losing some of those core functionality aspects for me, which really make the game what they are. So we'll see. That's my little thoughts. I'm sorry if it was a bit kind of rambly, but I thought I'd do this more kind of casual video where I sort of talk about the feeling I have with the game, rather than the specific sort of blow by blow going through in an analytical list from start to finish ABC and sort of reading down through. So I hope you get a kind of feeling from what I've been saying overall about what I actually feel with the game. There's loads of stuff to see that we haven't seen already. There's different vehicles that we haven't seen yet. There's some good maps we haven't seen yet. There's the Grow House one, for example, which I've played on. That was really good. So I'd say, you know, don't place your bets yet. Just hold fire and see where we go with it. But, you know, there's other things to consider. You got to think about the longevity of the game, like how much are you really going to be playing it? Are you going to be playing it for a year or more? There's a lot of games out. There's a lot of games on the horizon. So, you know, it's not, if this doesn't turn out to be the game for you, it is not the end of the world. So don't panic. There's more Battlefield titles coming. They have already said this. And by the way, that's pretty interesting, as we remember the fact that they actually came out, EA, and said like, hey, you know, there's going to be Battlefield 5. And it's just like, okay, why are you saying that right now before you're about to release this other game of yours? It's kind of like, yeah, that wasn't a particular confidence booster as well. So we'll see. You know, they have been working really hard to tweak the game as well. I'll just finish by saying that. They've been really working hard to sort of listen to people and the community and hear about the changes they want to make. Whenever I have made sort of comments towards them, they've been very receptive, very positive, very discussive about those elements. And again, I want to push that out there as something that's very positive to do. It's really positive to kind of listen to the community and hear about the things. There's a lot of stuff that's been changed already. There's a whole pool of work from the CTE that they can sort of bring on board there as well. So, you know, all of that together, you know, they surely can't fail. They surely can't have the same kind of similar launch they had with Battlefield 4. Just can't happen. They've got so much planning and preparation and stats and information and double beta. You know, all of that together means this should be a strong launch. I'm very interested to see how that goes. So that's my thoughts today, guys. Drop your thoughts below about Battlefield Hardline. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.